Let's talk about Kirby and Georgia going into Austin and taking the Longhorns' manhood. So I don't know if this has been happening, and maybe I just didn't know it. But it sure seems to me that Georgia just flipped the switch. Like they beat the you-know-what out of Clemson, decided to sleepwalk for 6 or 7 weeks, Luke's, and then they just flipped the switch again and absolutely run Texas out of the stadium. Is that fair enough analysis?
Yeah, but they didn't do it in super clean, flawless fashion, right? I mean, you can still see where their warts are, and they're struggling to effectively run the football. Although they ran it better, they are way too risky with the football through the air. The reason why they won this game is they absolutely dominated Texas up front, particularly the defensive front for Georgia and the Texas offensive front, and Texas helped them out. Texas turned the ball over, penalties, really poor on third down, averaged 1.1 yards a carry. I mean, holy smoke. So this is there. Here's what I think has taken place at Georgia. Now they got to be able to maintain it. And that is, for the longest time, because of the level of success that they have sustained, they've never been able to play with the chip on their shoulder. They've never been able to be the underdog. They've never been able to be the snake backed into a corner. And I think that Kirby Smart has masterfully played that role with his team really, really well. And I think when you consider their collection of athletes, their roster profile top to bottom, and you add the hunger element back into it, they're going to be a problem. They're going to be a handful, right? But just as we're seeing really across the SEC as a whole, Alabama's been sloppy. Tennessee is sloppy. Georgia's been sloppy. All right. Texas on Saturday night was sloppy. At times undisciplined with all of those teams that I've just mentioned. And so it's kind of leveled the playing field to some degree. Ole Miss in the same fashion, already sitting there with 2 losses. Nobody would have envisioned that. So I think the league top to bottom is experiencing more competitive balance and parity, not because it doesn't have potentially dominant teams, but because of the teams that are quote unquote supposed to be the best teams aren't always playing good football.
Yeah. But they wrecked Clemson and Texas. And like you said, the Georgia defensive line.
Clemson for 1.5. That game was 6-0 at the halftime.
Yes. Yeah. But still, I mean, they manhandled them in the second half. What kind of walk me through what Georgia's D line did to Texas offensive line?
I thought what they did a great job of is they handled the line of scrimmage with their front 4 and didn't have to pressure as often. Now, they pressured some, but I loved some of their line games, their stunts inside to try and set up offensive linemen to commit to one area when you're going to get a looper coming back to fill that open gap and get a free rusher on the quarterback. That's an offensive line at Texas that's got at least 2 first-rounders and probably 3 draft choices on it. And so to see Georgia overwhelm them the way they did for the entirety of the game, that was the difference for me. And it generally is in all championship level type games. We've talked about this for 100 years on your show, Bo. It's, if you're going to win and be dominant up front, you have essentially upped the percentages of winning the football game significantly just in that one area. And I just thought that they were relentless in their effort, and they set the tone from the very get-go of how the game was going to be played.
Tom Luginbill on the Out of Bounds show. All right, all the teams are flawed in one way, shape, or form, like you started off in the interview. But if your power rankings this morning, is Georgia number 1 or someone else in the SEC?
In the SEC, I think that they probably have to be right now. Listen, do I think if Texas and Georgia played, 10 times and Texas doesn't, lay an egg the way they did? I mean, listen, the bottom line, Texas turned the ball over 4 times. When's the last time we saw Texas turn the ball over 4 times? Maybe in the first season of Sark's tenure, maybe, when they weren't anywhere near as talented. And against 95% of the people that Texas would play, If they did that, they'd probably get away with it and win the game, right? But not against anybody that's really, really good. So I think you've got to credit Georgia there. Yeah, I think that's fair to probably say Georgia right now. But I would also lump Georgia, Texas. I don't think with as sloppy as Alabama has been, I would put them in the conversation right now. And I wouldn't even know if I'd put Tennessee in the conversation right now. They've been uber sloppy as well. But you got to look at LSU and Texas A&M as playing really clean football.
And they play this weekend.
Yep.
Okay. I just saw A&M. Connor Wigman did not impress me. I was in Starkville on Saturday. He could have thrown easily 3 more picks. And, I mean, he was throwing it right to Mississippi State guys.
And he had a great week the week before, and then it wasn't even the same guy.
I don't know, again, I don't know the ins and outs. I can't see what you're seeing in others. But I just know Mississippi State had every opportunity to pick him off. And he had guys running wide open. And he hit them some, but golly, he missed them some too. So that was
better, by the way. If you took Michael Van Buren and put him on Auburn's team right now, can you imagine how different they'd be?
You jumped on the week after Van Buren committed to Lebby and dropped the Oregon commitment, and you said this dude can play. Did you have him in the Under Armour All-American game, Luke?
Oh, yeah, we did. I said he was a right-handed Dylan Gabriel, if I remember my quote correctly.
Yeah. To play as a true freshman with the lack of talent that he has around him and play as well as he has it won't get the credit it deserves because there's too many big boys in the conference, but it's unfreaking believable, Luke's.
Yeah, it is. And I'll tell you, I think Jeff Lebby is quietly developing a culture and a team and a foundation where there's building blocks right now. Nobody's paying attention, but all of a sudden you start looking at those games and looking at those outcomes, and Mississippi State's scoring points, right? And they're finding ways to stay in games, and they're competing, and the quarterback's getting more and more confident. They're not where they're going to want to be. But if you go back to earlier in the season and when Blake Shapen went down and they were not playing very good football, this looked like it was going to be an absolute disaster. And now it doesn't look that way. It looks like a team that's gaining some confidence.
Okay, well, let's go there. I'll go to Oklahoma and Ole Miss in a minute, and the firing of Seth Luttrell and the promotion of Joe John Finley. Let's go to Starkville. Both teams play this weekend, Starkville and Oxford. Ole Miss at 11 a.m., Mississippi State at 11:45 a.m. So Arkansas at MSU. This is going to be one of the few opportunities of a winnable ball game for them, Tom Luginbill. What do Lebby and Van Buren and them need to do to come out with one more point this weekend?
Well, I don't think they're anywhere near being a good enough football team to make mistakes and overcome them. I think that's the thing, and we're seeing that more and more and more throughout college football with how the transfer portal has thinned out rosters, affected people's depth. The teams that are playing the most error-free football are the teams that seem to be rising to the top each and every week. Now, if you're just flat out better than somebody, that's one thing. You can afford to make an error here or there, but that's not where Mississippi State is. So, listen, you got to have a healthy run game. The freshman quarterback can't make errors, and then you can't make errors worse, right? You can't take a bad decision and turn it into a catastrophic one. And I think to your point, if there are plays to be made in the back end and the other quarterback's going to throw it to you, you got to make those plays, right? You can't. You're not in a position as a team to overcome something or win against somebody that maybe you shouldn't if you don't take some of those gifts. You gotta be able to do that.
I agree with you there. But it's a winnable game for Mississippi State, and we'll see what shakes out there. Tom Luginbill with ESPN on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. All right, Oklahoma's a train wreck on offense, and South Carolina had 41 yards on Saturday, and it was 21-0. So Oklahoma Venables decides to fire Seth Luttrell. He promotes Joe John Finley. They really can't figure out what they want to do at quarterback. They went back and forth. Ole Miss is a 20.5-point favorite. I think most everybody does. Do you expect Ole Miss to run Oklahoma out of the stadium?
I do, because I think Oklahoma mentally and emotionally is on their last leg. And this is going to be a real test of this locker room in Norman, Oklahoma, because let's not forget, and I'm not making excuses for them, but they've essentially played the entire first half of the season without their top 5 wide receiving targets in the lineup. Not 1, not 2, 5. So they have not given either one of the 2 inexperienced quarterbacks any help from a personnel injury standpoint, which, obviously you hate for that to happen as a coach, but you can't control it. They haven't been able to effectively run the football, so they haven't been able to take pressure off of the passing game. And then the offensive line has really been in shambles. This is a really talented, good Oklahoma defense that is getting caught up in a snare because they're on the field all of the time. So they're worn out, they're worn down, they're getting worn thin, and you're on the back half of the schedule. And a team like Ole Miss that can get going fast and wear you down and get up on you, 10, 14, 17 points, Oklahoma's not equipped to play from behind. They can't do that. So I think it is imperative that Ole Miss get off to a fast start. And that means winning on first down and getting continual first down so that the pace of play, we've talked about this so much. I had SMU on Saturday night. They're the exact same way when it comes to tempo. They're like, we want to go as fast as we can, but if we don't win on first down or we don't get first downs, we're out of our element. And I feel the same way about Ole Miss. So they've got to get back to controlling that tempo on early downs.
Joe John Finley's been promoted. He was the passing game coordinator under Lane Kiffin in 2020 before moving to Oklahoma with Venables. And that it's kind of talk about that. You're seeing coaches get fired, coordinators, whatever.
Yeah.
He's in the building. I mean, he's been with the players, but it got to be a tough transition, right? Going from just getting blown out by South Carolina, and now you got to go to Ole Miss, where Lane's got like a 90% winning percentage at home.
Well, that and, there's no waiver wire, right?
Right.
There's no trade deadline. You're playing with the guys that you got. And right now they have so many concerns with just lining up and blocking the right guy, right? That's where it begins. And then all of the other stuff that follows all of that stuff. So whether it's Joe John Finley or Seth Luttrell or Jeff Levy or Lane Kiffin, what have you, like you are subject to what you are playing with on the field on that afternoon. And coaches can only do so much. You can prepare them. You can put together the plan. And you can do all of the right things and push all the right buttons during the week. But does that mean that you're good enough to go out and do everything the way it was drawn up? Absolutely not. And I think that's the challenge here for Joe John Finley. Okay, it might be a different point of leadership, maybe a different perspective. We'll see if the approach is any different, but you haven't changed the chess pieces on the board.
Right. Who's the best quarterback in the league right now?
Who is the best quarterback in the league right now? That is a good question.
Pavia?
Maybe. I mean, let's just say this. He seems to be the most consistent, what you see is what you get, performer, run to pass of any quarterbacks in the league right now. I think that would be fair to say.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting when you say something like that. Well, I say that, it might be Garrett Nussmeier.
Ooh, he's playing good football.
I think he's really, really, really good. And they're starting to play well down the stretch. They're improving just enough on defense. We'll see this weekend. Obviously, that's going to be a telltale sign for them. But I would probably go Garrett Nussmeier and then Pavia 1-1A.
Okay. Man, those are two good football players. Good grief.
Well, what's interesting is you asked that question. And if you ask that question in August, right, I don't know if either one of those two players would have been top of mind for anybody. All right, it would have been Carson Beck, it would have been Quinn Ewers, it would have been Jalen Milroe, might have been Graham Mertz at Florida. If you're looking at it from that perspective early on, Jackson Dart at Ole Miss. And it just goes to show you as the season starts to play out and, because for the most part, top to bottom in the league, we went from looking at this league and saying there could potentially be 5 college football playoff teams, which essentially you'd be saying there's 3 dominant ones. To now, looking at Alabama with 2 losses, Ole Miss with 2 losses. The winner or loser of LSU Texas A&M is going to have 2, right? Auburn's a mess. Kentucky's up and down. South Carolina is just good enough to beat somebody. Florida's actually improving. But Texas, Georgia, Alabama were supposed to be the clear cut above everybody else. And I'm not so convinced that they are. And the reason why isn't because of their player profile, is they haven't played clean. And you could throw Tennessee into that mix too. All of those teams that are supposed to be the best teams have by and large played sloppy games, undisciplined, heavily penalized, turnover-laden matchups that are uncharacteristic to what we normally see.
You mentioned LSU and A&M. They face each other this weekend in College Station. It'll be wild. Neither one has lost since Labor Day. So it's A&M's laying 2.5. They're both coming off road wins, Arkansas and Mississippi State, as you know. You like LSU? You like A&M?
I kind of, if LSU can stop the run, I like LSU because I think they're more potent and explosive offensively. But if LSU can't stop the run and it keeps LSU's offense on the sideline because Le'Veon Moss is hitting home runs, then now the score stays lower, which helps Texas A&M in the fourth quarter. So keep an eye out for LSU's ability or inability to stop the run, because if they can't stop the run, then I think Texas A&M puts themselves in a really good spot here.
All right, Tom Luginbill on the Out of Bounds Show and the Farm Bureau Insurance Guest Line. The show is brought to you by Southern Ag Credit, financing life outside the city limits. Let's go with Auburn at Kentucky. Hold on. Hugh Freeze is finding ways to lose. It is unbelievable. Up 17-3. And he looks like a madman. Like it is driving this guy crazy. He's not sleeping. Kentucky's not any good, but Auburn has to go to Kentucky. I mean, what gives here between the two?
Well, here's the deal: is it's been a long time since I watched that game with Auburn in Missouri in its entirety. The one thing that finally clicked with me is that Auburn has a complete and utter inability to handle prosperity and then take momentum when they get it and capitalize on it. They do not respond well to something good happening to them. I know that sounds odd, but every time something good happens to them and they look like they're about to light the fuse, they screw it up. They cannot handle positive momentum. And it's head scratching to me. And I know that they're handcuffed right now. I know they have below marginal quarterback play, but the defense was playing lights out. All right. The running back's a good player. They did enough to win the football game. The kicking game is still killing them. The field goal would have probably won the game for them. But to see what Brady Cook did, and I don't want to diminish Missouri and that quarterback and what he did late in that game. That guy could have stayed in the hospital and watched on TV. He could have come back to the complex and put crutches under his shoulders and watched from the sideline. Instead, he comes back and plays. And as a result, won him the football game.
Yeah. You're right. That was a hell of an effort.
It was amazing. Yeah.
Okay. So do you like Auburn in a close one?
This game, I don't like either one of them.
I don't either. I mean, Stoops doesn't believe in playing offense, so what the hell?
Is that Kentucky?
Nobody will be there. They're checked out now. It's basketball season, right? I mean,
well, the thing is I want to sit there and say, okay, at some point or another, Auburn's going to, get something going their way, and they're going to capitalize on it. And I keep saying to myself that after I just told you what I told you, they don't have the ability to do that. So I don't trust them. So I'm going to say Kentucky at home.
Real quick, Kurt Signetti. Have you watched the quick clip of him talking about how Google me, I win?
Google me.
Oh gosh, so good.
It is good, but it's a little obnoxious too.
Yeah, well, I love it as what I do. But so, have you known him along the way? Have you ever met him? I mean, the guy. It's an unbelievable story about what he's done as a head coach after working for Saban.
Midweek MAC game with him. Know of him a little bit because he was Greg McElroy's coach at Alabama, and Greg and I worked for 4 years together. Listen, he's done a remarkable job, and where he deserves the most credit is when they went fishing in the transfer portal. He wasn't worried about the prettiest guy. He wasn't worried about the tallest guy. He wasn't worried about the strongest arm. He targeted the most productive player in the portal. And when you look at what Curtis Rourke accomplished at Ohio, and I had 3 of his games, Curtis Rourke's games, it's easy to see why that's the guy they went after, because now you plug and play a guy with a remarkable value of high-level play. And I think that their research and what they did was just really, really strong and a great feel for how you look at the portal and the things that you target and that are important to you.
I read the article on ESPN.com a couple of days ago. You probably hit it too, where they kind of featured what Cignetti did. And it's nothing short of remarkable that they're hosting game day and 7-0 at a basketball school that never wins and so on. It's just, at 63 years old, this doesn't happen, Luke. I mean,
no, and he's pretty good now. I mean, when I say that team's actually pretty good. They got the perfect schedule. The schedule plays out really, really well for them.
Okay.
And with Michigan kind of tanking, right? So they got to play Michigan and Ohio State back-to-back. So we'll see. But to this point, he's put them in position.
Where are you this week?
I get to drive. I've got SMU at Duke on Saturday night.
Dude, those teams are 12-2 combined. I mean, Lashley and Manny Diaz have done a great job there.
Yeah. And SMU doesn't play Clemson or Miami during the regular season. Like, they're in the mix here and nobody's talking about them.
Wow. Good for you going to Durham. All right, bud. Have a great week. Thanks, Luke.
Thanks, man. You too. Bye-bye.
The Out of Bounds Show is brought to you by Southern Ag Credit. Call them today. Financing life outside the city limits, right there in Ridgeland. Southern Ag Credit.com. We're live in the Bank Plus studio.